Hello, you're listening to the Ask Dr. Be Good show, the show where we bring positive things that are happening in public education to you every week. This week, we have very interesting guests. And so I will have them go around the room and introduce themselves, talk a little bit about their background and what they're bringing to our podcast today. You want to start, Mr. Powell?
Yes, thanks, Dr. Good. My name is Simon Powell. I'm the president and CEO of a nonprofit called Collaborative for Fresh Produce. And our mission is to work with growers in the state of Texas and beyond to really try to recover produce that they have grown but don't have a market for, and get that into the hands of food banks across the state and across the country.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Adam. I go to Legacy Preparatory Charter Academy. I'm in 8th grade, and at our school we have a garden, and I helped grow a lot of produce there and donate it to the North Texas Food Bank.
My name's Kayla. I also go to Legacy, and I'm also in 8th grade, and I was also part of with the garden planting.
I'm James Pacheco. I'm the 7th and 8th grade science teacher in Plano. I also teach forensics in Plano.
And I'm Alicia Ford. I'm the Nutrition Services Manager with the North Texas Food Bank. The North Texas Food Bank is a nonprofit hunger relief organization, really working to nourish families and feed them. And I'm specifically going to speak about our partner garden initiative that we have with Legacy Prep Academy within the nutrition department.
And thank you for being here. And congratulations to your moving to your new headquarters.
Yes, thank you.
It must be very nice.
It is. It's very nice.
So we have 3 clear layers that may not seem clear yet, but by the end of the podcast, we'll be able to show how at a micro level we can impact a community up to impacting communities across several states. So let's start with you, Mr. Pacheco. Talk about how you are impacting the Plano community with the school garden.
So when I started teaching 7th and 8th grade, we have this big area in the back, and it was actually transformed into a garden, and with a teacher that was before me and a bunch of scholars also helped. And I thought to myself, what can I bring when we teach organisms and environments, something outside of the technology. Kids nowadays want to touch, they want to feel, they want to use their 5 senses when we talk about science. So I thought the best tool that we had was our big open garden area. And I also was thinking how can we utilize it? And specifically for 7th grade, we talk about food chains, food webs, transfers of energy, the decomposition process. And so I started our compost project. So the compost project is where kids learn about waste management, learning about transfer of energy, how the decomposition process works, and they create their own compost, which then leads into what we do with the garden when we start growing our produce.
And so talk a little bit as far as you have the compost project in the fall, and then what happens?
So, the compost project starts in the fall. We continually take waste, food waste, any type of waste from home, and we just continue to add and add and add all the way up till the spring. Once the springtime hits, we actually use the compost that the scholars created. We use it in our garden, and whenever it's time to learn about plants and gardening, we plant produce.
Okay, and then what happens? You've planted.
We grow produce. It's all planned by the scholars. They decide what's best to grow. We grow the produce and we donate to the North Texas Food Bank or whoever they're affiliated with.
So, Kayla and Adam, you've been through this process for several years, and so why do you think it's important for us to bring this to not only you, but your peers?
I think it's important because it shows how much work and effort it shows to actually grow the food that we eat every day. And it also is really hands-on, and it makes it interesting to learn about.
Yeah, because you learn so much just by doing it. You don't have to learn it. You can just, do it, and you kind of, grasp the feeling of, I grew this, and it gives us, a sense of, we did it. This is our thing.
And so I don't know, I'm asking you to think back a little bit, but do you remember hearing other kids who maybe were expressing a wonder at what they were doing? I mean, the reason I ask you that is because I have the understanding that so many of our kids really don't get exposed at home to gardening of any sort. So
yeah, a lot of kids don't really experience what they eat, or not like that, but like they don't really like know where it comes from. And this project, you see a lot of kids start to like, when they're like this with the squash is what we grew last year, kind of like sprouts, and they're like, that's really cool, and like so, yeah.
and maybe to us adults who did grow up around planting, I'm amazed at that, and I you know that that's why we do this.
Yeah, and also, as you said about the compost, like you see after like a couple weeks it like rains, you know, and then you see like after you move like some of the paper, and then you can see like there's like brown like compost, and it's like, wow, that's pretty cool.
It's turning to soil before your very eyes, sort of thing.
Yeah.
All right, and you've helped to actually be part of that donation process. How did you feel about that?
It was pretty like, wow, I help people.
Yeah.
It gives you a self of a accomplishment knowing that you grew this and now you're giving it to an organization that will help people who don't necessarily have access to food.
So we thank you for that, and we keep doing it. So okay, so now we have gone through the micro piece of growing at the campus level. We've handed it off to the North Texas Food Bank. Then what happens?
Okay, great question. So what we're doing with the nutrition department is we're working with our school gardens and our community gardens to divert their yielded produce to a nearby partner agency. We know it can't come directly into the food bank just for stipulations and other reasons, but we want to make sure that the people that need that food get access to it. So one of the things that I did with Mr. Pacheco is he reached out to me, let me know that he had some produce that he needed to donate. He didn't know what to do with it. So I utilized our agency map on the food bank's website, and I was able to, based on the school's location and zip code, find anywhere from 5 to 6 partner agencies nearby that would be willing to take the produce. And that's one of the resources that we like to be able to provide. We really want to be a connector for our gardens. And the other thing is I have a health education background, so seeing the school come full circle. They're doing the education. They're teaching the kids about how to grow. We have so many students that don't know that a carrot grew in the ground. So getting them excited about growing is a really good thing for me personally. But it's really nice to be able to get that produce into the agency's hands. They're appreciative. The clients are appreciative. And it's nice because it gives them a little bit more variety. With the food bank, sometimes we are providing seasonal produce both based on the season, but we know that our community gardens, our school gardens can provide a little bit more variety.
So how many school gardens are there in the area?
There in the area, I'm unaware, but as far as how many school gardens that we partner with, we probably have about 2 or 3.
Not enough.
Yes, it's not enough. So we're relying heavily on the school gardens that we do partner with, but we love to get the word out. If you have produce that is sitting there that you're unsure of what to do with, please contact us. We would love to help you get it into the client's hands, because at the end of the day, that's what's happening.
So if we had families who were willing to grow produce at home, could they donate to you?
We could that is a difficult thing. So there are some laws and stipulations in regards to it coming directly into the food bank doors, but we can always help a gardener or a grower divert their produce to a partner agency. It's a little bit easier for them to take that on.
And it's those very laws that that are ironic, and we'll chat more about that when it gets to the macro.
Right.
But are there any works to try to change some of those laws to make food waste not so easy to do?
That is a great question. That is probably outside of my realm. It's probably more in Simon's realm. But yes, I'm pretty sure there's going to be more research and legislation going in that direction because I know that food waste is a really hot topic right now.
Well, we've been able to make some changes at the food cafeteria level. It used to be about 3 years ago that we could not let any untouched food go to another child. But we can now. We can have a shared table. But it took years to
Right.
get that changed to where we could not have to throw away those apples and the
Right, or
pears
the
that had
unopened
not,
milk, right.
you know, been touched. But the child was forced to take it, even though he or she knew she didn't want it, and then had to throw it away.
Right.
So, and let us know how we can help with that. Let me mention that if any of you have legislators that you know are working on things, and we can help you with that by contacting the legislators, by having kids write letters, please let us know. Wouldn't that be powerful? That you have kids, the voices of kids, helping you support those changes. Okay. All right, so we talked about the gardens at the school level, and then what happens when we go to the North Texas Food Bank, who never gets enough food. And so Simon, what are you then able to do across the state?
Yeah, I think this is a good moment just to take a step back and really be clear about how big a problem this is. So it's estimated that about 1 in 7 Americans are food insecure, which means they're not regularly getting access to nutritious food they need. Research has shown time and time again that fresh produce is one of the best sources of nutrition that the human body can get. And really, since history's begun, fresh produce has been a key nutrient for humanity. And so when you think about 1 in 7 Americans not getting access, that equates to about 45 million people, which is basically the population of Canada. So within our country, which by the way is the richest country in the planet, we basically have a Canada-sized population that isn't getting access to the nutritious food that they need to live a healthy life. Now, that's pretty bad. But what's even worse is that each year, just at the farming and the packaging level, anywhere from 6 to 20 billion pounds of produce is either left in the fields or disposed of at packaging because the growers just don't have a market for a lot of it.
And they don't have a market because why? You failed to mention why that they're leaving some of that on the ground.
Oh yes, the big reason why is the high emphasis that retailers place on the cosmetics of the produce that they sell. Anytime you walk into a produce department in a grocery store, you're looking at basically beauty pageant winners. So when you look at that bin of apples next time you go into a store, really take a good look. You'll see that there's a remarkable uniformity. They all look pretty much the same. They're pretty much the same size and pretty much the same color. Well, it doesn't happen that way in nature. And so for every apple that you see in a store, there's probably at least 1, maybe 2 or even 3 that has been left behind because it doesn't look quite as good. The thing is that apples that are slightly deformed, slightly too big or too small, are just as nutritious as an apple of a perfect size. If it has some scarring, it's still perfectly safe and perfectly edible. The point is that anything that Mother Nature creates is going to have some variation in it. And that's why I think it's so important for kids particularly to get experience with seeing produce as it comes out of the ground. Mm-hmm. Because then you realize, not every carrot's going to exactly be the same size and this perfect shape, right? Not every tomato is going to always be this exact size and color. And that's what, kids and even adults who haven't experienced or had the opportunity to grow produce, their only view of produce comes from what they see in retail stores, and it's really not a true reflection of what's out there.
So a lot of what you're saying is making me wince because we do have food deserts. We do have families who don't get enough food, and you're telling me that oftentimes half of the food is being left not in grocery stores, whether it's on the ground or sometimes for feed for animals or something else, just because they don't look uniform.
Yes.
Wow. So what is your cooperative doing?
So what we work to do and achieve is we go to the very large growers. In the U.S., there are really a handful of growing areas that really produce most of the fruits and vegetables that we consume in our country. California, Arizona, and Florida alone combine for close to 80% of everything that we grow domestically here. We also import a lot of produce from Mexico, and most of that comes through two border crossings, Nogales in Arizona and McAllen in Texas. So we work with those growers who have this surplus produce, and we want to make it easy for them to be able to donate it to us. And the reason we're able to make it easy for them is that when they tend to have surplus, we're not talking about a carton or a pallet. We could be talking about 15 truckloads or 20 truckloads. And that's way too much for any single food bank to be able to process in time, because process, unlike canned foods, the clock's ticking, and every minute it's not either being grown or consumed, it's literally dying, and so needs to be consumed quickly. And so as we can aggregate demand from over 40 food banks, we're able to quickly move large amounts of produce and take it to a variety of different food banks to ensure that it will then be turned around and be distributed across a wide range of communities.
How do you do that?
Well, the first and foremost is really working with growers to really make them understand that we are not here to add cost to them. We recognize that when there is a surplus, the expectation shouldn't be that they should always pay all the costs associated to making it available for us to get. So we work with them to really give them that option to say, hey, look, if it's going to cost you an extra 2 cents a pound, say to package something you might otherwise leave in the field, we will cover that cost for you so that you're donating the produce to us, but your cost of making it available, be it packaging, being it moving it around somewhere, we can cover that so you don't lose money. Because many of these growers are very cash flow sensitive.
Sure.
And so we need to be able to make it where they're not losing money by doing the right thing, which is donating to us.
So where do you get the 2 cents to pay growers?
Well, we get it from a number of sources. First and foremost, we're here as a service to food banks. And so whatever cost that we give or pay to growers and the cost of transporting it are passed on to the food banks that actually receive the produce. And so their funding comes from either public support or there is state funding available from the Texas Department of Agriculture, Texans Feeding Texans grant. We also, as CFP, get some private funding from foundations that can also go to help offset some of those costs. But it takes a lot of coordination.
Mm-hmm.
You look at your Walmarts and the Krogers of the world, they literally spend billions in technology to swiftly move produce from these growing areas to a network of stores. We essentially need to do the same thing.
Sure.
We just don't happen to have that billions of dollars worth of technology investment on hand to help enable that.
Is the state of Texas helping eagerly, or are they half-heartedly? I mean, you have a grant from them. Is that a sort of a grant you can count on consistently?
Yeah, it's a grant that's increased in size and continues to be well supported by both sides of the legislature. And again, it's really hard to argue against it, because it helps growers and then also helps get produce to those communities that need it. So I think overall, we've had a good response and continuing support of that. I think more is needed. I think it's a program that benefits the state ultimately in terms of lowering the number of health care costs and things associated to that. So hopefully it will continue to grow.
Can you share a little bit about those health stats you had shared previously with me, and those were about obesity and diabetes?
Yeah, absolutely. And Alicia can comment too, but there's a very high correlation between populations that live in what are termed food deserts and certain health issues. Now, food deserts are essentially areas where there isn't a store that sells fresh produce within a 5-mile radius. And so if you're a child and you're on your way home from school, you get off the bus, you want to get a snack, in many of these same neighborhoods that don't have grocery stores, you'll see a Kentucky Fried Chicken or McDonald's or 7-Eleven. And that's where they, in effect, are forced to go to buy food. Because when you're an age that you can't drive, or if you don't have a car, you don't really are able to go to that Whole Foods market that may be 10 miles away, or that Kroger that may be 6 miles away. So they end up with diets that are very high in saturated fats, very high in sodium, and that leads to all types of medical conditions. It leads to diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, and the statistics show that if you are a person without regular access to fresh produce, you're about 30 times more likely to develop diabetes than someone who does.
30 times.
30 times, and you're 40 times more likely to suffer from obesity as well. And some people think obesity is not a hunger problem, but in fact it very much is, because that's just a symptom of the wrong type of food being provided to communities.
Alicia, any stats to add to that?
Yes, so just like Simon mentioned, one of the biggest concerns is when you have an individual who is food insecure, at risk of going hungry, the concern is the link that possibly has to chronic disease. So we're talking about high cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes, and a lot of times diet can help control some of those things. So if we have an individual that's going to the physician and the physician is telling them you need to be eating more fruits and vegetables, but they don't have the funds to purchase that food, that's where the food bank, and like Simon is talking about, the fresh produce can come into play. We want to make sure that individuals have access to that food so that it can improve their health outcomes.
One of the things that we're guilty of, even at the school level, we want to help. We have canned food drives, and we really don't focus in on the fruits and vegetable piece. I think we need to get better at that.
And one of the things that we do, in addition to the Partner Garden Initiative, we also do culinary education, nutrition education, and our goal is really just trying to help people maximize access to health food, nutritious food. So one of the things that we do is we let them know that, yes, we want you to try to get fresh produce, but there are ways to still get nutritious frozen and canned foods. So the canned food drives are still very helpful, because one of the things that we teach our participants are, if you're getting canned corn, canned green beans, yes, we know there's going to be salt in that water, but most people are pouring off the water in that can just because they were taught to do that, not necessarily knowing why. But the reason your parents, your grandparents taught you to do that is they know that in the canning process, salt is added to preserve. So you pour off that water, you can even rinse it off and utilize your own water. So you're automatically cutting the salt. And we live in a day and age where they're selling products that are low sodium, no salt added. So those are also helpful. And even if you're in the grocery store and you see bagged corn or green beans that are frozen, that's still going to give you access because there's normally not any salt added to those, or a small amount. So the canned food drives are still very, very helpful.
You're bringing up some good points that we hadn't thought of. And Mr. Pacheco, if you'll help remember this, when we do a canned drive, let's make sure when we send the list home to the parents that we say no salt. Prefer no salt.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And that's one of the things we can help with. We have a canned food drive handbook. So the next time you're doing your food drive, please reach out to me or somebody at the food bank and we can get you that handbook. And there are a list of some of our most requested or most needed items. And you'll see some of those.
Okay.
They're going to be heart healthy, health focused. So you're going to see that we're requesting whole grain foods because it's there's research behind the fiber in the whole grains helping control diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure. So yes, we would love to help with the next canned food drive or food
So
drive.
normally towards the end of the podcast, I ask people, because it's the Ask Dr. Be Good show, to ask me questions. But today, I want to do this differently. I want you to tell us, how can we help in your work? And I want that even, Mr. Pacheco, how can, what is needed at your level? What is needed at your level besides just the donating food?
Right.
What else? And at your level, Mr. Powell. So take a minute and think, what can we do to support your work that all three entities are doing?
Well, I think one of the things is recognition that it takes a whole host of different people and organization to solve this problem. Collaborative for Fresh Produce can't solve it all by itself. North Texas Food Bank can't solve it by itself. So it does literally take all of us as a community, both locally here, but statewide and nationally, to recognize that we all have a role to play. The role for CFP is to try to work with growers to increase the availability of produce. But getting it available is part of the problem. Actually getting it consumed and into people relies very much on education and just growing knowledge about how important it is to eat produce and how to get access to it if you don't. Canned food drives, I think, are still very important. But how about, maybe seeing if you could develop a community garden, maybe with a local agency, where year over year, it's an educational opportunity for kids while at the same time providing a source of produce. I think that what we do at CFP is sort of on an industrial scale, but what happens more at the local level still has an impact, not so much in volume, but in terms of spreading that awareness and spreading the community aspect of it.
Thank you.
Yes. So one of the things that you're doing is you're doing it already, advocacy, just getting the word out. Like we mentioned earlier in the podcast, we only have about 2 or 3 school gardens that we're working with. We would love to connect with more school gardens and do what Simon is talking about. Definitely work with the communities and at the community level and really just increase the access to fresh produce and a variety of produce to the pantries that we're working with. And then, yes, advocacy, support, getting the word out.
You're right, because as you were talking, I was remembering the fact that many of our kids, especially those in the low socioeconomic community, they don't recognize what nutritional food tastes like. They reject what we bring them because they're not used to it. And so if every once in a while, one of our students will write a review and it'll be about the food, and it's ironic because when we do bring these salads and the fresh apples and pears that we normally bring, they're not eating them.
Right. And it's because there's a reason why there's high sodium and all these types of things, because they're literally designed in a lab to make it taste good, particularly to kids. So in some ways we're really fighting an uphill battle. But I do think that leading by example is important. I think challenging students. Hey, come up with a way to cook this eggplant that would make it tasty to you. I think it has to be a dialogue. People aren't suddenly going to change overnight, but I think slowly but surely. Keeping that awareness going, talking about the fact that, when you are eating something, it may taste good now, but 20 years from now, heaven forbid, you get diabetes and you're having to inject yourself. I mean, that's not going to be, you may question whether, was it worth it?
Right.
Kind of like smoking in a way.
Right. So, yes, you're exactly right. And I have that conversation with with family members sometimes, especially, I've got grandkids, and sometimes those grandkids are taken to McDonald's, and so the parents and I have conversations.
Right. And you, the fact that you all at Legacy Prep are starting your students off young and getting them engaged in this, that means they're more likely to consume those fresh vegetables because they had a hand in growing it. They had a hand in turning that compost.
I want you to know that this is the second year in a row that we've not had allowed processed meat. No hot dogs, no corny dogs, no pepperoni.
That's excellent.
We have at least one meatless day.
That's good.
Because, I am reading what's out there, and I'm trying to slowly but surely make changes. But it's hard. It's, I'm fighting parents. I'm fighting adults.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned to you my fight about the Lunchables.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to look at those. Mr. Pacheco, how can we support your work?
And just continue the awareness, like everyone's been saying, awareness, get the word out. Yes, we're doing it 7th, 8th grade, but how can we get that down into kindergarten? How can we get that into our seniors? Start and just continue to bring professionals in to create that awareness and help us out with that.
And it's more than a food problem. It's a nutrition problem. It's a health problem. It's an education problem that we all need to continue to tackle. I think at Legacy we've made some inroads, but we're not there yet. So I thank you all for coming today. I thought I knew a lot about this. You brought new information to me, and please know that I'm your biggest fans when it comes to helping spread the word. But some of you may know that I'm head of the advocacy committee for the Texas Charter School Association, and I'm very advocacy aware. So please do not hesitate. If you or anybody in your organization is working with legislators and you need some cute kid stuff, we got the cute kids. That we've learned that they can help change legislators' minds much faster than the adults. So please allow us to do that. We'd enjoy the experience. So
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. So let me just ask Kayla and Adam, what are you taking away from this? What new information?
That so much food that could be helping people is going to waste, and that so much more awareness needs to be brought to the organizations that are helping people get food when they get fresh produce when they don't have any access to it.
Yeah, and like she said, there's only 2 or 3 partner schools that have a garden. And it's like, if everybody had a garden at their school, imagine how much fresh produce each school could make. It's like they have a problem and they can fix it, and just do it.
So thank you for being part of the solution by continuing to help Mr. Pacheco. And let's see if we can get some other grades to embrace the work as well. We've had that where we've had other grades do it. And then sometimes new teachers come in and they get busy. But we need to stay focused on understanding not only technology, but in saving our environment and saving our people's health. So thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ask Dr. Be Good show. For more information on Legacy Preparatory Charter Schools, visit our website, legacypca.com, or call 469-249-1099. And remember to like us on Facebook, where we stream live weekly Tuesdays at 3 p.m.